Yeah, welcome along to the transfer show. The Isak story is fast becoming a saga.
Is regarding Alexander Isak. And there are a few things to clarify, so that's why I'm here as usual on the channel. Liverpool today presented their first official bid after the informal discussion they had more than 2 weeks ago with Newcastle for Alexander Isak, opening official talks with Newcastle. So what happens, guys? The official bid has been presented. My understanding, and I can confirm that, I know there are contrasting reports on that story, but my understanding is that the bid from Liverpool was £120 million. This is what Liverpool offered for Alexander Isak, according to my sources, also with the possibility to include add-ons as part of the package. The answer from Newcastle to this proposal was no, thanks, full stop. Newcastle didn't say this is the price. Newcastle didn't say let's negotiate again next week. Newcastle didn't say the player is untouchable. Newcastle said no, offer rejected, stop. So that's the message from Newcastle, and this is probably why you see now many reports on Liverpool not willing to bid again for Alexander Isak, because obviously when you see Newcastle that strong on their position, for Liverpool would be pointless to go and send bids every day, every hour for Alexander Isak. But internally, Liverpool know that this is part of the game. It's still beginning of August. There's still plenty of time to go before the end of the transfer window. So Liverpool expected Newcastle to be strong on their position, especially because of one reason. The only way for the Alexander Isak deal to happen this summer is if Newcastle find a top striker on the market, and decide internally to let Isak go to Liverpool. That's the only way. Without that step, it's going to be impossible to see Newcastle, to see, at least as of today, impossible, never say never in football, but as of today, Newcastle showed that their stance is the player is not leaving, especially without a replacement. If there is a replacement, let's see what's going to happen. So Liverpool today wanted to send a message, not just to Newcastle to show, okay, here are £120 million plus add-ons, but also to the player. Isak is exposing himself in an important way. Don't forget that. Not traveling with the squad, not traveling for pre-season tour, not training with Newcastle. So Isak is exposing himself. Now Liverpool wanted to show to the player, okay, we are really ready. That's not just an informal conversation. That's not just a verbal proposal. It's an official bid. So Liverpool sent a clear message to Alexander Isak. We are here, we are ready, we have the money, we are prepared to make something important. Newcastle say no, but Alexander Isak remains on his position. No intention, as of today, to sign a new contract, despite being offered that, and intention to go to Liverpool. So let's follow the next steps of this.
A place to start. It is fast becoming the saga of the summer. His name, of course, is Alexander Isak. Now,
Newcastle fans, Liverpool fans, and breathe. It's been one of those days, and it feels like it's been one of those days every day for the last couple of weeks or so. More developments today, and significant developments as well. Not just interest, not informal offers, not communication between the two clubs. There has been an offer rejected by Newcastle from Liverpool for the striker Alexander Isak. It was worth, we understand, 110 million plus add-ons. So it was a significant starting point for any possible negotiation between the two clubs for a player that is very highly rated. Newcastle value him at £150 million. But where do we go from now? And it feels like with everything that's happened over the course of this summer, the noises that are being made from both sides of the fence, that this is something that will rumble on and on and on. At the minute, Eddie Howe is with his squad in Asia for their pre-season tour, whereas Alexander Isak, who didn't travel to Asia with the squad, is in Spain training at Real Sociedad, one of his former clubs, with his own team. And, you know, you have to look at this situation and think this automatically feels like a saga. You look at it and you think this is all a little bit bizarre. Things aren't quite the way you'd expect them to be. I think the key situation here is that this potential deal would be a Premier League record, which gives you an indication that these things don't happen overnight. Huge sums of money at play here. But one thing that's really important to point out is that if, for example, Liverpool were to bid, just say 200 million for Isak, and Newcastle said, OK, yeah, we accept that, doesn't mean the deal gets done, because any potential deal will be subject to Newcastle United getting in what they feel is a top-class, Champions League-ready, world-class striker. That is the caveat to any potential deal should Liverpool pay what Newcastle are looking for. So there's a long way to go.
Is there not a danger then that if they don't accept it, regardless of whether they've got a replacement or not, of course they want to bring in someone if Isak goes, that they might not get this money again?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, they could be looking at this financially, saying this is the kind of money we're never going to get again. However, Alexander Isak could stay at Newcastle. He could sign a new contract. He could stay, and then he's still got 3 years left as things stand. He could be there this time next year. He could have scored another 30-plus goals in the season, and his value will still be in excess of 100 million because he's been brilliant. And that's another scenario. And I think this is the most difficult thing. There is not one single person, whether it be Arne Slot, Eddie Howe, Dharmesh Sheth, Michael Bridge and Mark McAdam, that could sit here and say, this is how this is going to unfold, because no one, even the big players at the table, do not know in which direction this is going to go. But the key thing is Newcastle and Eddie Howe will want to go into the season knowing that they have got a more than capable squad of challenging top 4 Premier League, get to the latter stages of the Champions League, win another piece of silverware, and that means good quality players going in, and that's where the challenge lies. But they are in the market to sign more players.
Yeah, and they are, and they were in for Benjamin Sesko. Of course, they're still in for Benjamin Sesko from RB Leipzig. Manchester United are pursuing him as well. Over the week, the noises we're getting there is that Sesko might prefer a move to Old Trafford over St James's Park, but again, it's going to depend on the financials. Brentford forward, Johan Wissa. He's another one. That one, you talk about Isak becoming a saga. This one is getting a bit unsavoury, isn't it? He has no intention of playing for Brentford again, is what we're being told. And he is desperate to join Newcastle United. Look, I was watching the 5 o'clock transfer show with you two guys. Mark McAdam was making a really good point there about Newcastle fans saying that this was going to be the summer where they've just got their first piece of silverware in years. They're in the Champions League. They're going to go big in the transfer market. So, Michael, how frustrating is it for Newcastle United, for their fans, richest club in the world, and yet they can't actually physically go out and spend the money that they'd want to?
Yeah, I mean, look, we know about these PSR constraints. I think the thing is in Newcastle, from the takeover onwards, is that they've jumped in the fast lane and it's been good. And recruitment-wise, they've got it pretty much bang on every time. Let's start with Kieran Trippier. He brought a bit of leadership to that squad and he's been a captain there for some time. Bruno Guimaraes, one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. OK, Sandro Tonali had a ban which we know about. Top quality midfielder. I think the midfield's probably one of the best in the Premier League. They've spent very well, Anthony Gordon. But now they've hit this brick wall. Now, what interests me as well, we talk about replacing Isak. I think in an ideal world, Eddie Howe would like Isak and someone, because we have got the new European format, the Champions League, Europa League. These are relentless, non-stop games. And you saw clubs come up short last season because the fixtures were too much. That, I'm sure Eddie Howe wants to build on it with Isak, not without him. So it's a saga indeed. But you mentioned players there, and we mentioned Ollie Watkins at 5 o'clock about being a potential replacement. I'd imagine that would be in a saga in itself, because Aston Villa are ultra ambitious for next season as well.
Yeah, do you know something? I feel really sorry for Newcastle in so many ways, because this is absolutely not the way they would have planned this window to unfold. They were sort of set back straight away with the departure of Paul Mitchell. So the people at the top of the club doing all of the deals at the moment are picking up things literally last minute. Now, most sporting directors, Dharmesh, and you'd be able to quantify this, will have a plan in place probably in February and March with how we want to attack the summer.
Even earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we want to do. By the end of May, we're going to do this. We're going to go and get these 2 or 3 targets in nice and early. We're going to go and make sure this has happened. We're going to sell this person, sell that person. And all of that work is done for weeks and months in advance. But at the end of May, middle of June, they were left without a sporting director. So they've got Eddie Howe, who's taken on the reins to try and help out as best he can. You've got Steve Nixon, who's been at the club a long time, and you've got Andy Howe. Andy Howe has been responsible for some of the best business that Newcastle United have done, but he doesn't have a lot of experience at the top end of negotiating deals. Although he's negotiated deals himself, he's sold players himself, he's scouted players himself and targeted them, he's trying to pick up the pieces of what's been going on. And I know a lot of players that they've targeted over the course of this summer, they've missed out on. Is that because they're going for the wrong players? No. They're competing with the top-end teams to try and get the very best players. Is it their fault that they've gone and joined Real Madrid or Liverpool or Chelsea, or they've gone elsewhere for more money? No. Liverpool can offer bigger money. Manchester United can offer more money. So Newcastle have to just go, this is what we can afford, this is where we can go, this is what we need to do. So therefore they can only work to the budget that they've got in the position and the pecking order of the Premier League table and the financial table. So they're actually trying to do the best they can, and just coming up against dead walls all the time. And that's where I feel frustrated for them. The structure is good there. They just need a little bit of luck.
Do you think there's a possibility? There's 2 transfers I remember. Luka Modric, Spurs to Chelsea. Spurs said, you're never going there, right? wasn't happy, but he stayed another year, joined Real Madrid. Harry Kane, Man City, not happening this summer, didn't happen, went to Bayern Munich. Do you envisage maybe Isak potentially staying one more season, then going a year later, Newcastle sort themselves out in terms of replacements? Or you think it's gone beyond that now?
Well, ultimately, Eddie Howe's stance will be, I want Alexander Isak to stay. And I believe you can be a huge part of this team moving forward this season. There has been a lot that's happened over the last 2 weeks. Alexander Isak is in Spain. The fans know what's going on. The fans know that he's asked to explore any potential opportunities to depart Newcastle United this summer. So there has got to be a lot of bridges built between him, the fan base, the management, his teammates, and he, to perform at his very best, has to be happy and comfortable in himself in this situation. So whilst at the minute he's a Newcastle United player, they're back from Asia on Monday, he's got to get his head on playing for Eddie Howe and training well and being ready on Monday to be a part of that squad, regardless of what happens with any potential offer from Liverpool if a second one was to come.
Mark, a lot can change in a transfer window. We on this transfer show 3 weeks ago were talking about Newcastle United bidding for Hugo Ekitike. And the Newcastle fan base were getting very excited. It was dream scenario number one. Hugo Ekitike and Alexander Isak playing up front for Newcastle. Then when Liverpool came in, it was the second best scenario, whereby Alexander Isak will stay because we know Hugo Ekitike has gone to Liverpool. The worst case scenario they were talking about was Hugo Ekitike doesn't come and Alexander Isak still leaves. There is that possibility that can still happen, but by the same token, a lot can change in the remainder of this transfer window, can't it? If they can press play potentially on one of their prime targets, then the face of the transfer window changes again, doesn't it?
One transfer, one phone call, one moment can completely transform the whole summer. The optics right now for Newcastle fans is this has been the worst summer in the history. And 3 months ago, it was the best season ever. And that's how quickly things can change. We know that they're interested, as you've said, upon Benjamin Sesko. It's another player that is of interest. Difficult deal to get done, an expensive deal to get done. We know that they're interested in Johan Wissa. One or two things just slotting into place and suddenly the whole situation can look completely different. And that's why working in transfers can be so difficult, because we could sit here with information right now, we can walk off there at 8 o'clock and the whole story's completely changed. And you have to be almost you have to almost pre-plan, or what's the word? You have to guess what's going to happen next. Because preempting it, that's it. Thank you very much to the producer in my ear. Because you never quite know what's going to happen and what direction it's going to take. And this is what makes it so frustrating for fans, because you think we're getting Hugo Ekitike brilliant and suddenly you've lost out on him. You think Alexander Isak's going to stay and suddenly there's still more interest. And therefore, it makes it really difficult for us to predict what's going to happen, because you feel like you're always chasing shadows and you're always one step behind.
So on the one side, Newcastle United, it feels like, as you said, potentially a really nightmare scenario for them. It's not the same from a Liverpool perspective, is it? This is turning into one of the most extraordinary windows from a club that we've ever seen. They've already spent close to £300 million. If, it's a big if, Isak was to come, it will take the spending past Chelsea's record outlay back in 2023, which was around £435 million. That's if Newcastle United get the £150 million that they would want if Isak was to go.